How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? I'm Barber Conable, and this program is called Speaking of Rochester. In this program, we talk with one of the pillars of the community, the greater Rochester area, about his particular expertise and understanding of what makes this an interesting community. We'll talk about the past and the present and perhaps the future to some extent. Today, we're privileged to have with us the Reverend Errol Hunt of the Memorial A.M.E. Church.
A.M.E. Zion.
A.M.E. Zion Church.
Oh,
Excuse me, I must get it all there.
All right.
A church that has considerable influence in the city and in the particular area in which it is located. Reverend Hunt comes to us from a varied background. He spent a good deal of time in the Urban League. He was born originally in New Bedford, Massachusetts, lived for a substantial period of time in Rhode Island, and came here only in 1993, but has brought with him a considerable impact of his own personality and influence as far as the Rochester community is concerned. Welcome to the program, Reverend Hunt. We're happy to have you with us.
It's good to be here.
I didn't mean to leave the Zion out.
That's
Is there some reason
right.
for that?
Yes, there is. The AME Church was named the AME Church both in Philadelphia and in New York. James Varick, our bishop, with others, formed the AME Church in New York. In the 1800s. In fact, even before that, maybe in the 1700s. The AME Church was also begun in Philadelphia and by Richard Allen, and we were incorporated, some historians suggest, just before the AME Church, the African Methodist Episcopal Church of Philadelphia, and we were the African Methodist Episcopal Church in New York. Once again, begun at about the same time, but there had to be a difference in that we could not come together as one church, so you had the two different churches. So we added Zion to the name and was incorporated under that AME Zion label, I guess around 1827.
Oh, it is a very long-standing organization.
Oh, yes.
I take it's a very widespread organization, too, in this country now.
Well, we are worldwide, not just in America.
Not just
we
in
are
America.
worldwide. We're in India, in England, in Africa, in South Africa, and South America.
How big is your church here?
Our church here, now when you say here, I'll talk about our district. This is the Western New York Conference, made up of the Rochester, Syracuse, Buffalo district and the Albany district for the whole conference. And there are about 35 churches from Troy, New York, down to Jamestown and Watertown, down to Elmira, or Binghamton, New York. So that's our breadth in the Western New York area. But now we are worldwide. We're about 1.5 million members, and our connectional office is in Charlotte, North Carolina. Salisbury, North Carolina has our schools, our main school, which is Livingstone College, and our seminary that I graduated from also is in Salisbury, and it's called the Hood Theological Seminary that is accredited.
When did you go to seminary, Reverend Hunt? You were active in the Urban League for some time before you became a minister, isn't that correct?
Well, I became a minister while I was the executive director of the Urban League of Rhode Island. I went to seminary after I retired, if you will, or just left the Urban League, because I worked 7.5 days a week, didn't know how to, do things on a more reserved basis. So I had to get out after 15 years, because I put, as I mentioned, 7.5 days a week, and I just had to get out of it.
So I remember there are only 7 days in a week.
There are only 7, but I worked 7.5 days. So after that, I went into the ministry full-time in 1985.
I don't think that's necessarily a picnic.
Well, The Urban League or the church?
I'm talking about the church. I
The
think you
church-
probably work pretty hard. If your work in this community is typical of what happens to ministers, you've been working perhaps 8 days a week here.
Well, I guess when you're younger, you can do those kinds of things, because now I look back and wonder, how did I do what I did? I was an Urban League executive director. I had a radio program weekly. I had a television program weekly. And I was a minister who traveled from Providence, Rhode Island, down to my hometown, New Bedford, for 5 years, 5.5 years. And I had to go down there Mondays, Wednesdays, sometimes Friday nights, Saturday, and Sunday. How I did it, I do not know. But looking back, it was an excellent experience.
What brought you to Rochester?
In our church, we are a connectional church, and our bishop can suggest and or tell us where to go. And I looked to come, I was transferred from New Bedford to Attleboro, New Bedford, Massachusetts, to Attleboro, Mass, to Providence, Rhode Island, then from Providence down to Elizabeth City, North Carolina. Now, I asked to go to these various places, and I also asked the bishop, one of the bishops, we have 12 bishops in our connection. I wanted to go to Connecticut to get closer to my mother, who lived in New Bedford. He had nothing that close. The only thing I could come to was Rochester, and I'm blessed to be here. But that's how I
think
got
we're
by.
blessed to have you too, sir. You've been a good influence here ever since you arrived, and I know your reputation, and
Well,
you have
I
every reason to be
certainly-
proud of the move you made.
I appreciate that, and I'm really happy to be here, because there's something that can still be done to bring about the kind of community that we need to have in this city, which is, I think, doing well in many of the things it does for the constituents of the city and also for the members of the church, and yet we can do
There's
some more
still a
things.
challenge there.
There's still a challenge.
Yes. When I first ran for office, sir, it was in 1964, and there were riots here.
Mm-hmm.
And I recall that there was great surprise in the white community here that there was a significant black community. They simply were not in contact with them.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, many of the African Americans in Rochester had come recently from Florida and South Carolina and had not had the benefit of New York education, were here for reasons of kinship and otherwise, but were unable to find jobs in this community because it's a high-tech community and their education had not prepared them for it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was terrible frustration.
Mm-hmm.
This coincided with the advent of the Great Society of Lyndon Johnson's. Now, I was not a great admirer of the Great Society, but there were some things there that were significant. And one of them was the spawning of organizations like Action for a Better Community, a controversial organization, but one that brought the black and the white community into communication for the first time. And it seems to me that was the beginning of some improvement in the relation of the races in this community. The whites simply were forced to focus on the underprivileged blacks that had come from other places and did not have any indigenous leadership. The blacks came to understand that the whites couldn't just push a button and make their troubles go away. And there was an interchange of ideas that began to bring about some improvement.
I'm happy that when I was in Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island, that I had the opportunity that Rochester had also to take over from my previous executive director, who was one of the founding members or the founding executive of the Urban League there, to work with the community in total, whether it was the church community, the business community, the civic community, etc. And he was there for 35 years, and I took over after he did. And it's interesting, though, the pace with which we can come together. But I'm always uplifted because I know what the end's going to be, and I look at the idea that the church has to do more than it ever has done, because it's only going to be through love and not real force Because if you force a person to do something, as soon as they get a chance to go the other way or go back, they're going to do that. So it has to be, I guess, on various planes that you work via the laws of this country and the laws of what we're supposed to believe in. Love, as Christ gave us the example, and the mandate or directive. And I think by using those qualities, we can bring about what needs to be done. But yes, we have some distance to go yet.
I take it you're a great believer in pluralism then, in approaching our problems in an ecumenical way from the various elements of society, that each has a responsibility to try to improve the circumstances.
Well, you see what's happening today with HUD and the Congress, if you will, calling for more involvement of the faith-based communities. They realize that there have been problems with other institutions bringing about the kind of change that we are, in quotes, paying for. It shouldn't be looked upon as that, but yet it is. But I do think that the church, I know it has to be involved in the progress of any community, because therein, lies the best of humankind when they use that kind of a thrust
Reverend
or
Hunt,
platform.
you've been involved in development over in the Third Ward area, where a significant number of our African Americans live. Is that making some progress? I understand that there has been some housing improvement there. Urban renewal has had its downside too, of course, but at least it is progressing to some degree, isn't it?
I would suggest that Frederick Douglass Village, which we have been blessed to be a part of, and we're in the process of building it. We're building 23 single-family homes.
When you say we, are you talking about your church in particular?
The church that birthed the Frederick Douglass Community Development Corporation. We're building 23 single-family homes for, in some instances, many instances, first-time homeowners. And that Frederick Douglass Village will be able to compete with any other area of housing in this whole state on its level. The houses cost basically $89,000, but the visual picture that one gets from the outside and in the house itself, the construction, we have an excellent developer, Don Laudadio from Imperial Developments, doing an excellent job, and I just can't wait for the last house to be built. We suggest by December of this year it'll be completed, again with 23 people, some single family, women.
23 houses, you mean?
23 houses, but with single women who are heads of their own households, a few husbands and wives, then some seniors who are also in there. But it's going to be one beautiful place to come and see that complements the Cornhill neighborhood which we are in, but nothing in Cornhill can overcome, if you will, our view in the addition to the city that it is.
To what degree is what sociologists call gentrification affecting the Third Ward?
Well, I guess as it affects...
Gentrification, by that I mean recreation of urban elite within the community.
We're trying, well, again, I mentioned we're in the Cornhill section, and I guess that has a reputation of being a certain class of people, etc. So we're coming in with people who are going to be eventually in that class because of their education, but yet they didn't have an opportunity to buy a house for many, many reasons. And then those folks who were on welfare, now they've been able to buy a house, they've got their education, and they are getting more. So we're all getting, let's say, we're going to get on equal terms or equal basis. But I just don't think that that'll be the kind of problem that some people think it might be in the future as we work towards coming, I guess, more or less on an even basis.
It's pretty important for people who have been underprivileged and who have made it to stay in their community if they can, instead of heading to the suburbs.
That's because
of the leadership
That's
potential.
because of the conditioning of society that said, 2 cars in every garage and a chicken on every stove, and to live wherever, to get out, move away from certain things. But some of those people who have been encouraged to move out into the suburbs, they're coming back into the city for many reasons. The basic needs of a people, they're here in the city. Hospitals and stores.
And urban sprawl is not always a
as
comfortable condition.
and it's not the thing it used to be. For instance, I used to live in Providence, Rhode Island, and when the mayor of that city did not want the major stores to stay downtown and said, yeah, go ahead out there to Warwick or wherever in Rhode Island, now they're all coming back into the city. And the city is being built up. We're having a problem here, as you know, with the city and the county and not being able to do all things together. But they're going to have to eventually, given the circumstances and given the dollars also. But more of our people, when they have the opportunity in the city, and the city is made to be the kind of place it used to be, let's go back 30 or more years ago, I think they're not going to be as encouraged or want to go out to get away from whatever they were running from. And then it's not just black people who are coming back, it's whites who are coming back also. If you look at Washington, D.C., when I used to visit my brother down there, in certain sections of that city, people moved out, but now they're coming back in to buy those brownstones and other houses that are big and beautiful houses. And they're coming back into the city because of the services the city can give them. You know, and the buses, if you will, that can take you here and there on a timely basis throughout the day. And then the seniors, if they were living out in the suburbs, they couldn't as readily get to the markets and the department stores as you can and or could rather in the city. So I think that eventually you'll have all of that right back in the center city.
It's fortunate that you're able to call this village Frederick Douglass Village. You know, I sometimes think that Rochester doesn't realize that one of the great heroes of the abolition movement lived here for some time and ran a newspaper here. That Frederick Douglass is one of the heroes of that period.
I'm very concerned that today all we have is a gravestone, a grave, a statue, and a pole to honor the man. Yes, now we have a museum, but that has to be built up to compete with any other museum we have in this city because of the man's greatness. You're right. What he has done as an abolitionist for America needs to be handled in a better way now, once we can come together and do it and have something as significant as the Eastman Theater or a Strong Museum and those, given the man's ability and skills and what he has done for not just Rochester, but for America.
Yes.
And I think we're moving to that.
I sometimes think
very
he's
fast.
better known in Washington than he is here.
Well, he had some very, very well-known friends in Washington. He became the ambassador to Haiti. But he and other members of our church were known to the presidents of America.
Yes. Known for his eloquence, among other things.
His eloquence and his ability to come and let us reason together. Harriet Tubman knew some great people also, and they were able to articulate with people on their own level, and they understood because there was a need to bring this country together as opposed to keeping it as it was and sometimes is too often, even in this day, separate and apart.
Tell us about the Frederick Douglass Resource Center here.
Well, the Resource Center is going to complement complement the museum that we have here. I believe that more of our students in grade school, in high school, and in the colleges should know more about the activities of people in Western New York who brought about, if you will, the ability for us to come together and reason or to do things together. So it'll be a place where one can come and research about Douglass and what he did with Susan B. Anthony. Do you not know? Well, I'm sure that you know. He gave her the first opportunity or platform in that church, and he was with her in Seneca Falls when they made, for woman's, I'll call it woman's lib, if you will. But it was Frederick Douglass who worked with her and Staten to do things, and that needs to be known by everybody, black and white, because it was not just white America that brought about what we have today, which is the coming together. It was black and white and even other races.
The idea of empowerment was something that never occurred to the founding fathers, apparently, and it needed to be to have its impetus, and it's got a lot of its impetus from the burned-over district of upstate New York.
That's right.
Because of people like Frederick Douglass and Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B.
You know, when I was the executive director of the Urban League of Rhode Island, and I got involved in working between the corporations and the city and the state and other groups to let them know that, yes, we're here. Yes, we are as articulate and as educated as anybody else. In fact, the more that you get into history, you find out that history came from Africa, a black continent, where the Hebrews went down into Egypt and Ethiopia to get there. To what they learned from that continent and from black people. Now, some folks who don't
As a matter of fact, humanity began in Africa,
humanity
too.
began there, and if they were there wearing no clothes or scantily amount of clothes, then they had to be people of color. If they weren't black, they certainly not were Caucasian. But that's irrelevant because we are all God's children. Now, I accept this, I'm sure that you do, but too many of our people in America just think that they were the ones, and it's not that at all. It was Africans who did that. So that makes me, people who are, I guess they have low esteem, when they begin to read and better understand and know who the Hittites were, all those tights were people of color. They were not, as we see in the movies. Cleopatra was a woman of color. That means she was black. But we don't know that because we see different things. But once the world knows, and it's interesting if you go to Yugoslavia and in places in Russia, the Mary, who was called the Madonna, was called the Black Madonna. Mm-hmm. And I wonder why that was. When you learn about Hannibal and all that he had done, once we learn world history, both blacks and whites, I think there might be a change as to the thinking of people as to who's greater or the lesser of humankind.
Regardless of that, we have, as you said, we have a long ways to go. Mm-hmm. It's got to be in places like Rochester where we have educational institutions of considerable dimension, mm-hmm. where we have greater opportunities for self-advancement than many people do in mm-hmm. less technologically oriented communities, mm-hmm. Where we have good health facilities, for mm-hmm. instance. It's got to be in places like that that the progress is made, hasn't it? Well, we have to take a leadership position.
Well, since we've taken on this term, the Image Center of America, mm-hmm. I would agree that we need to do things, hopefully before others do that. But I think you have people in certain positions whose minds are right there. For instance, the mayor of this city. He is the workingest mayor that I've ever known.
He's a very, very strong person.
Strong, articulate, intelligent, and he's working for to bring about the coming together of the races. Mm-hmm. And I really admire that. And again, I'm very, very happy to be in this place. Some of my peers did not want to come to Rochester because there's too much snow up here. But I, in fact, love the snow, and I want to see more of the snow. And I mentioned this to my members, and they told me to, well, go to Alaska then and get out of here. But they were just kidding, I hope. But I love this. I love this community, love the area, and love the seasons of the year.
We're glad you're here too, sir. We're glad you're here because of the impact you've had since you came. You think the museum is a done deal, do you? It will require a lot of money and a lot of work.
The museum is going to be.
The Frederick Douglass
the
Museum.
The Frederick Douglass Museum is going to be in this city of Rochester and this county also. It's going to be how it'll really be run and what the end result will be. I think that'll be known within the next year anyway.
But the Frederick Douglass Resource Center will not necessarily be the basis for the museum?
No, because there is a museum presently. As you know, Councilwoman Maxine Brown has already opened up a Frederick Douglass Museum and Cultural Arts Center. And some people had concern that I was doing the same thing that she was doing. Well, no, since she's doing it, that would make no sense. But that's a museum that costs, as you mentioned, a whole lot of money. A resource center does not cost as much. It can do the other things, some of the other things.
Where is the resource center now, sir? It's in a private home, isn't it?
Oh no, it's not in a private home. It's in the church building, and we are looking to.
In your church building.
In my church building.
In the southwest part of the Third Ward.
Yes. And we are looking to renovate a building in Rochester, but I don't want to mention it because it's not factual yet. It's being worked on by the county, by the city, and by the state. But
we'll await further developments on that with considerable interest then.
Well, it's going to be something else, again, that'll complement and lift up the lives of people who heretofore have not been really.
We must all engage in that work. It's not just a strong Reverend Hunt or a strong Councilman Brown. It's got to be
community. And that's what needs to be, and we're working to that end.
Well, thank you very much for being with us, Reverend Hunt. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest today has been Reverend Errol Hunt of the Frederick Douglass, the Memorial AME Zion Church.
Yes,
I've got it straight, finally.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Barber Conable.
If you'd like a copy of this program, send 1995 to WXXI, Post Office Box 21, Rochester, New York 14601.